She said, "We need someone younger. Someone who actually understands innovation." That was the sentence that ended my 14-year career at Halbrook Financial Systems. She didn't whisper it. She didn't soften it. She said it across a polished mahogany table, in front of HR, in front of her cousin, and in front of a lawyer who wouldn't meet my eyes. I was 38 years old. And apparently, in her world, that made me obsolete. What she didn't understand was this: you can replace a title. You can replace a person in a chair. But you cannot replace the infrastructure that person built from the ground up. And when I walked out of that building, I didn't just take my purse and a cardboard box. I took the backbone of the company with me. My name is Audrey Collins, and for 14 years, I was the quiet engine behind Halbrook's financial empire. I wasn't on the billboards. I wasn't giving TED-style speeches at investor summits. I was the one who made sure the numbers were clean, the audits passed, the projections were precise, and the systems never failed. 3 mergers. 4 CEOs. 2 federal audits. I survived all of them. Not because I played politics, but because I built systems no one else fully understood. I designed the automated consolidation framework that pulled data from 18 separate reporting streams. I wrote the forecasting algorithms that investors bragged about in earnings calls. I restructured our compliance tracking software after a near-penalty scare in 2016. I didn't crave a corner office. I didn't need applause. My power came from being indispensable. From knowing that if I ever stopped showing up, the entire machine would stutter. Then Madison Harper arrived. Newly married to the CEO's nephew. Fresh from a career as a corporate transformation consultant, which I later learned mostly meant motivational workshops and rebranding campaigns. Within 2 weeks, she was appointed Senior Vice President of Strategic Innovation. No finance background. No systems experience. Just connections and confidence. At her first all-hands meeting, she stood under bright stage lights and smiled like she was unveiling a new tech product. She talked about digital reinvention, disruptive agility, and eliminating legacy drag. When she said legacy drag, her eyes lingered on anyone over 40. When they landed on me, I saw it. Assessment. Calculation. Disposal. "Some of you have been here so long," she said sweetly, "you've become part of the furniture. Comfortable. Reliable. But maybe not built for where we're going." The younger hires clapped. The veterans stayed quiet. I felt something shift that day. Not fear. Not anger. Just awareness. I knew the playbook. First, consultants. Then, restructuring. Then, documentation reviews. Then, removal. And right on schedule, her cousin Ethan Harper appeared the following month. Fresh MBA. 0 operational experience. Introduced as a strategic finance observer. He shadowed me daily. Asked questions that revealed how little he understood. Took notes like he was studying for an exam he didn't know he was failing. Madison framed it as collaboration. I recognized it as succession planning. What she didn't know was that 3 years earlier, after saving the company millions by building proprietary reporting tools on nights and weekends, I negotiated a contract clause. Anything developed on my personal time, using my own resources, remained my intellectual property. It was buried in subsection 12F of a confidentiality amendment no one bothered to reread. Every automation module. Every advanced compliance script. Every predictive reporting dashboard. Legally mine. Halbrook had usage rights. But access flowed through authentication layers I controlled. Quiet power. The Friday meeting invite came at 4:47 p.m. HR conference room. No subject. No agenda. I didn't need one. I backed up my systems remotely that night. Cleanly. Carefully. I wasn't sabotaging anything. I was preparing for the inevitable. Monday afternoon, I sat across from Madison. HR on her right. Corporate counsel on her left. Ethan behind her, pale and stiff. Audrey, she began, we believe it's time to modernize leadership in finance. Modernize? Such a gentle word for eliminate. She explained that Ethan would be stepping into an expanded leadership capacity. That my approach, while historically valuable, lacked the innovative mindset needed for the digital frontier. I asked one question. Am I being terminated for performance? Silence. My reviews had been flawless for a decade. We're moving in a new direction, the lawyer said carefully. Translation, no cause. They slid the severance agreement toward me. 3 months' pay. Immediate exit. 2-week knowledge transfer to Ethan. I didn't touch the papers. You'll want to review subsection 12F of my IP agreement, I said calmly. The lawyer frowned. Madison's smile thinned. Most of the systems Ethan will need to operate finance, I continued, are proprietary tools I built independently. You have usage rights. Not ownership. Ethan shifted in his seat. That's not possible, Madison snapped. I met her eyes. It's not just possible. It's documented. The room changed temperature. I stood slowly. You have 30 days notice under my contract. I'll honor that. But access to my intellectual property will revert to my direct control after my final day. Madison's voice sharpened. You wouldn't dare destabilize this company. I smiled politely. I don't have to destabilize anything. I just have to stop holding it together. The following week was tense. Ethan tried to extract documentation. I provided what belonged to the company. Nothing more. He began realizing that understanding an interface is not the same as understanding architecture. By Thursday, whispers had started. By Friday, investor reporting week approached. My final day landed on a Monday. At exactly 8:59 a.m., I was sitting in my car in the parking lot across the street. At 9 a.m., automated access tokens expired. At 9:01 a.m., Ethan's dashboard displayed authentication errors. At 9:04 a.m., IT began escalating tickets. At 9:12 a.m., Madison stormed into the finance wing. At 9:30 a.m., 3 major reporting systems were offline. Not destroyed. Not corrupted. Simply inaccessible. My phone lit up with missed calls. I let them ring. At 10 a.m., Halbrook's investor call began without consolidated financial data. At 10:17 a.m., one institutional investor exited the call early. At 11:42 a.m., a compliance officer emailed the board. By lunchtime, panic had replaced innovation. I wasn't celebrating. I was observing. Because this wasn't revenge. This was consequence. And consequence doesn't require sabotage. It requires truth. The truth was simple. They had fired the architect and handed the blueprint to someone who couldn't read it. And this was only day 1. By Tuesday morning, Halbrook wasn't in crisis. It was in freefall. I didn't need insider access to know that. My LinkedIn inbox told the story before the headlines ever could. Audrey, are you available for consulting? Audrey, quick question about system authentication. Audrey, do you still have access to the compliance bridge? I answered none of them. Instead, I made coffee in my kitchen, sat at my desk, and watched a 14-year ecosystem unravel without me touching a single line of code. At 10 a.m., my former colleague Marcus from legal called. It's bad, he said quietly. How bad? They can't generate regulatory filings. Ethan tried to manually rebuild the reporting model in Excel. It crashed twice. Madison is blaming IT. I exhaled slowly. IT didn't build the architecture. I know, he replied. The board is starting to understand that too. By Wednesday, the ripple effect had turned tidal. 3 clients had delayed renewals due to reporting inconsistencies. Sales couldn't access historical pricing models because those pulled from my forecasting layer. Accounting couldn't reconcile payment timing triggers without my automation scripts. It wasn't chaos because something exploded. It was chaos because something essential simply stopped existing. Thursday afternoon, the first public crack appeared. An industry blog ran a story titled, "Halbrook Financial Systems Faces Operational Disruptions Following Senior Finance Exit." It was diplomatic. But the comments were not. Someone leaked excerpts from Madison's all-hands presentation. The slide correlating age with innovation score. The line about furniture. It spread quickly. Age discrimination is not a forgiving accusation in corporate America. By Friday, Halbrook's stock dropped 9%. I wasn't celebrating that either. People's retirements were tied to those shares. But leadership decisions carry weight. And weight falls somewhere. That weekend, something unexpected happened. Roger from IT, 23 years with the company, called me. "I'm resigning Monday." I went silent. "Roger, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," he said. She called me resistant to modernization because I asked how they plan to rebuild 14 years of undocumented architecture in a week. He paused. "Do you have something in mind?" I had been quietly speaking with a venture-backed financial tech startup called Morrison Analytics. They needed structure. They needed compliance rigor. They needed battle-tested professionals. I said carefully. By Monday, 5 department heads had resigned. By Wednesday, 17. Not because I recruited them. Because they recognized instability when they saw it. Talent doesn't stay where competence is punished. It relocates. Morrison moved fast. They offered me Chief Strategy Officer, equity, autonomy. I accepted. Within 2 weeks, 28 former Halbrook professionals joined us. Roger rebuilt infrastructure properly this time, with documentation and redundancy. Sarah from accounting designed a real-time audit module based on patterns she tracked for 2 decades. We weren't clinging to the past. We were integrating experience with innovation. Something Madison had framed as mutually exclusive. Meanwhile, Halbrook worsened. The SEC requested clarification on delayed filings. 2 institutional investors pulled out entirely. Ethan resigned quietly after admitting in an internal email that he had underestimated operational complexity. That email leaked. The board called an emergency meeting. By then, the damage wasn't technical. It was reputational. Clients were uneasy. Employees were updating resumes. Analysts were skeptical. The narrative had shifted from transformation to recklessness. 1 month after my departure, Halbrook terminated Madison for cause. Publicly, they cited leadership misjudgment and strategic misalignment. Privately, according to Marcus, it was simpler. She had fired the one person who knew how everything worked. 2 weeks later, the CEO resigned as well. The board announced restructuring. Consultants were brought in at 10 times my former salary. But consultants can't reverse lost trust. They can't restore institutional memory. They can't reassemble a team that has already chosen a different future. 3 months after my exit, Halbrook filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The headline was blunt. Rapid leadership overhaul precedes financial collapse. I read it once. Then I closed the tab. That chapter had ended for me long before the filing. What mattered was what we were building. Morrison Analytics secured its first Fortune 500 contract that same quarter. The client specifically requested a team with proven operational continuity. Translation: adults in the room. We scaled responsibly. We documented systems properly. We built redundancies so that no single person, not even me, could become a hidden point of failure. Because the real lesson wasn't that one person can destroy a company. It's that ignoring experience can. One afternoon, months later, I received an email from Madison. Short. Controlled. I underestimated you. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I replied with 4 words. You underestimated experience. I didn't feel triumph. I felt clarity. This had never been about revenge. It had been about value. About understanding that institutional knowledge is not furniture. It is foundation. You can renovate walls. You can repaint ceilings. But if you remove the load-bearing beams without understanding their purpose, the structure collapses. I'm 38. Not obsolete. Not outdated. Just seasoned. And if there's one thing corporate America is slowly relearning, it's this: innovation doesn't replace experience. It stands on it. So if you're watching this and someone has ever told you that you're too old, too established, too set in your ways to matter anymore, let me say this clearly. Skills compound. Wisdom compounds. Competence compounds. And when you know your value, you don't beg for a seat at the table. You build your own. Thank you for listening to Audrey Collins' story. If this resonated with you, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Have you ever seen experience dismissed in favor of flash? Hit like if you believe wisdom still matters. And subscribe to the channel for more stories about corporate power, strategy, and knowing exactly when to walk away. Because sometimes, the strongest move you can make isn't fighting to stay. It's stepping aside and letting the structure prove who was holding it up all along.